Hello once again, MMA fans, and here we are. UFC 70 is finished, and it's a domino effect, folks. Just like one goes over and they all topple down. I'm gonna do the fights that we did get to see. I predicted 5 fights in my predictions, but I'm gonna do the 4 fights that we did get to see. I'm not gonna do the one lightweight bout that we did see because I didn't make predictions for it. On to the first fight we got to see. Czech Congo against Asuero Silva. Big heavyweights, both fighters come out. Congo looks like he wants to keep the distance, just pepper Silva with shots, and he was very successful at doing that. He was very aggressive when they were on the feet. He knew he had a distinct advantage on the feet, and he was really nailing Silva with some solid shots, kicks to the body, shots to the head. Silva was able to really take some good blows and seemed to have just a short enough reach where he couldn't find the range to fire back against Congo, because you saw him swinging. His arms just looked like they were just a little bit too short to catch him. Was able to secure a bunch of takedown slams, and it looked like they'd land in the same position every time, with Congo almost in a guillotine. Silva would land in half guard or side control, wouldn't do anything from those positions. Didn't look like he, I was screaming for elbows like 3 or 4 times. I'm like, dude, rain down some elbows, some hammer fists, something. And he just seemed content to just lay on top of him. And they were stood up a bunch of times. I think there was a few instances where Congo was able to sprawl, excuse me, and keep the fight standing. Other than that, Silva really couldn't mount much of an offense against Congo. And in the third round, Congo just rained down punches when he was in Silva's guard. He was able to really get a lot of work in from the guard and pound down on Silva. Even opened up a cut, and one judge even had it a draw. But nevertheless, Congo gets a split decision victory. A big win for him after his loss to Carmelo Morero. On to the next fight. Michael the Count Bisping in his home country against Elvis Sinasek, and this is a recurring theme for Elvis. He fought Forrest Griffin, a light heavyweight winner, in his second fight in the UFC. Now he fights Michael Bisping in his second fight in the UFC, and same result for Elvis. Pretty much what a lot of us thought was going to happen happened. Excuse me again. Both guys come out, get into a good exchange right away. Bisping goes right into Elvis's guard, and in whole first round, Bisping was pounding on Sinasek, just running a clinic, body, head, elbows, punches, was just working Elvis over, had his face a mess. At the end of that first round, he ran a real ground and pound clinic on Elvis Sinasek, and it looked bad. I thought possibly they would have stopped that fight, kind of a hometown call, but that didn't happen. They go into the second. And during the course of another early exchange, right away, looked like Elvis had caught Bisping with a knee. Bisping more or less kind of slipped, didn't catch him flush. Sinasek rushed right in and looked like he had secured a Kimura, and I was surprised he let that go, because that Kimura looked like it was fully on. I was like, oh man, he's going to submit him, because that Kimura was torqued, and he looked like he let it go. Gained Bisping's back. I thought he was going to try to sink in a choke, but I think Sinasek was more or less just gassed and completely tired, because Bisping, with no problem, switched right into Sinasek's guard and just started raining down the shots again from guard. And ref steps in, stopped the fight. Ground and pound win for Michael the Count Bisping. 3-0 now in the UFC. Let's see what the UFC throws at him next. Hopefully it's a bit tougher competition than Elvis Sinasek. On to the next fight we saw, and it was the fight that most people thought was going to be the most competitive on the card. Turned out to be the most boring. Andre the Pitbull Arlovski against Fabrizio Verdun. Classic matchup, the great striker versus the great grappler, more or less the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist, and Verdun versus, one of the most feared strikers in the world, Andre Arlovski. Looked like a feeling out process for most of the match. A lot of circling in the first rounds. Verdum strategy seemed like he wanted to bum rush Arlovsky with flurries. He was able to catch Arlovsky a few times. Arlovsky was able to weather it and just work the leg kicks inside and out, created a bunch of welts on Verdum's leg. It was pretty nasty. I was surprised he didn't do that more against Tim Sylvia, because Andrei Arlovsky has a pretty heavy leg kick. Really didn't throw the hands as much as I thought he would. I think he was more worried about the sprawl, defending the takedown, and not getting off balance with crazy shots. But I was surprised that he really didn't let his hands go more. And I think Verdum shot in only twice for takedowns, and Arlovsky, as athletic as he is for his size, was able to sprawl out once, and one time just basically just push Verdum out of the way and avoid the takedown. But going into the third round, Herb Dean was like, you guys got to fight, otherwise I'm going to take a point away. And more or less the same. A lot of circling, a lot of, one jab, two jabs here, and leg kicks, and Arlovsky gets the unanimous decision victory. He's 2-0 now since his trilogy ended with Tim Sylvia. He looks like he's a player again in the heavyweight division. Verdum is a top 10 heavyweight in the world, but it's kind of hard for him to fight. I think Arlovsky might have saw the Alexander Emelianenko fight with Verdum, saw how overzealous he was, really didn't respect his BJJ as much, went to the ground with him and got submitted. But Arlovsky played it safe. We'll probably see him in there with a striker again, so he looks a little bit better. But nevertheless, big win for him. Now on to the main event. Mirko Cro Cop against Gabriel Napao Gonzaga. And you know what? I'm not even going to do a post-fight for this, because we all saw what happened. It was shown on free TV, so no excuses. We all got to watch it. We all saw what happened. And what can you say? I mean, and I'm gonna do a little bit of not a rant, but I'm gonna talk about it, the MMA and this new sport that we all love so much. And for a lot of us, like myself, and those of you out there who've been watching it for 9+ years now. We all saw what happened. And if it would have happened the other way around, nobody would have said a damn thing. If Cro Cop kicks Gonzaga in the head, you know what? We all expected it. Never fun to watch, but we all expected it. Now, this gives us all something to talk about. It's funny, what you heard last night wasn't just Cro Cop hitting the canvas of the octagon. You heard that big crash was all those fans, all those fair weather fans jumping off that bandwagon. And that's what I'm going to talk about with MMA instead of doing the post fight for that fight. Is you've seen it time and time again, and you know what, as fans learn this sport and it gains new fans, and it's a volatile sport. It's not like boxing where you know how a matchup's going to work out because of style, and there's only one skill set involved, which is hands. This guy's a counter fighter, this guy's just a slugger. Bad, you can kind of dictate the matchups, whether it be good or bad. In MMA, we try to, analyze a striker versus a grappler. This guy doesn't want to go to the ground with this guy wants to stand up. But as we see this sport grow, you're going to start to see the skills in terms of guys that stand up and guys that grapple. They're going to start to shrink. Little by little, you're going to see the very, razor thin disparities between grapplers and strikers, guys who like to go to the ground, guys who like to stand up. You have to be serviceable in all areas. And credit to Gonzaga, he obviously went to the gym, worked his ass off, and came into this fight and let it all hang out. I mean, I was in a way, I was happy to see a guy go in there and say, you know what, the hell with it. I'm going to lay it on the line, and if I lose, I lose. But if I lay it on the line, I might just win. And he laid it on the line, because I guarantee you, Cro Cop did not expect a head kick from Gabriel Gonzaga. And I didn't think that it ended till I saw Cro Cop just drop. And I was like, You know, wow, what the hell just happened? And I'm sure a lot of you thought the same thing. And, you know, we've seen it now time and time again. I mean, when Couture got knocked out by Liddell, nobody expected that. You know, Couture had fought heavyweights, had fought Liddell before and dominated him. He had never been KO'd with one punch. And lo and behold, Liddell caught him and knocked him out, and everybody was in shock. Joe Lozon beating Jens Pulver just the way he did, just dominated him. You know, I felt bad for Joe Lozon going into that fight. Thought he was going to get murdered. You know, Jens is coming back to the UFC. This kid's, you know, never really fought anybody. Went in there and destroyed him. You know, Anderson Silva, you know, the way he ripped through Rich Franklin, we all thought it was going to be a competitive fight and a close fight, but we didn't see Anderson Silva destroying Rich Franklin like that. Even though GSP had walked through a lot of his competition, we didn't see him buzzsawing through Matt Hughes. We certainly didn't foresee Matt Serra, you know, just coming through and destroying GSP the way he did, catching him with a punch and knocking him down and then just mounting him and ground and pounding him. Nobody saw that. And it's good. We're going to learn this as we see this sport grow and we see these guys get better and better, because we don't really get to see the development and their training and what they do in the gym and all the behind the scenes stuff. We don't get to see that. We only get to see what they did in their last fight and analyze what they did in their fights before. So that's the kind of way we gauge who's going to win and who's going to lose. We don't know what these guys are doing in the gym, and it's going to be, you know, something for us to watch out for in the years to come with mixed martial arts, as you're going to start to see the skill sets, you know, the disparities shrink more and more, and guys are going to get better and better at each thing, and it's not going to be as wide a margin of good and bad anymore. I mean, of course you're going to have guys that are elite at certain things, but you're going to see the other guy be able to defend himself at those things. He's not going to be as weak. And you saw Gonzaga was able to, you know, ground and pound Crow Cop for a good portion of that first round. And the thing that I was shocked about was Herb Dean standing him up. Gonzaga looked like he was working. He had him up against the fence, and Herb Dean stood him up. And I was like, wow, this is big for Crow Cop. He might be able to steal this round and catch him with something. But it was the other way around. And back to the fans, and the thing about MMA, it's so, the finality of it is so like, wow, the way it ended. It's not like football. It's not like baseball or basketball where you get to see your team play, you know, each week during the season. It's not like that at all. Like NFL, like, oh, we had a bad game, but we'll be back on the field next week. Or baseball, oh, we play a game tomorrow, you know, to get back in the winning way. Or basketball, you see your team in 1 or 2 days. No, you don't see these fighters for 3, 4, 5 months at a time. You know, fighters fight roughly between 2 to 4 times a year, depending on their health, depending on what happened in their prior fight. So people kind of have, convenient memory. They like to have selective memory, shall I say, where they like to remember, the good versus the bad. Like, oh, this guy, he got destroyed in his last fight. He looked horrible. Who is this guy? All his prior fights. You see people on the forums questioning Crow Cop like he's some sort of bum now. Like, oh, how bad were the Pride heavyweights? He didn't KO Cupcakes. Igor Volchanjan has been in MMA for a long time, and he knocked him out with that kick. Igor's a tough son of a bitch. He's not a weakling. Keith Haring, despite what people think, isn't a weak fighter. Alexander Emelianenko is not. He's a top 10 heavyweight, and he got KO'd by Crow Cop. It just happened to be Gabriel Gonzaga's night. That's it. Simple as that. And people, as like I said, as we see the sport grow and the years go on, we're going to learn that this is the nature of the beast with mixed martial arts. There's so many variables involved, and anything could happen at any given point in time during the fight. So big win for Gabriel Napal Gonzaga. And the fans, like I said, there's just, a plethora of fair weather fans, bandwagon fans that are now going to jump off the Crow Cop bandwagon and say, now, wow, he could have never survived with Chuck. He could have never done. It's easy to be a Chuck Liddell fan now. It's easy because he's knocking everybody out. It's very easy. But I guarantee you one thing: the second Liddell drops from a KO, if and when it does happen, people are going to fly off his bandwagon too and be like, well, he was a one-dimensional fighter. He was this, he was that. Chuck Liddell's a great fighter. He is. He's no doubt about it. Even though I picked Rampage to beat him in their rematch, at the end of the day, Chuck Liddell's a great fighter. Period. That's it. At the end of the day, Crow Cop is a great fighter. And great fighters lose sometimes. It's just the way it happens. And regardless of what people say or write or put on the forums, it doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, these guys are the guys who get in there and put on the line. You never know. They could, have personal problems or just have a bad night. It's just the way the sport works. Also reaffirms my belief that Fedor Emelianenko is the best heavyweight in the world. It's just the truth. The guy, regardless of who he fights, goes out there and gets it done every single time. Over the course of his whole career, he's had one loss, and it was like a 17 seconds or whatever into a fight against TK where he just got grazed over the brow, and they stopped the fight. Very similar to Vitor Belfort against Randy Couture. And Couture came back and destroyed Belfort, as did Fedor against TK. And essentially, Fedor hasn't lost in his whole career. If you wanna put it like that, he really hasn't. And he's gone out there and he's KO'd people, he's submitted people, and when he goes to a decision, he leaves no doubt that he won the fight. And he just doesn't let his guard down, regardless of who he fights. Whether it's a blown up 185er in Matt Lindland, whether it's a close to 300 pounds K1 striker in Mark Hunt, whether it's I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say this, not so much washed up, but I think an outdated Mark Coleman, who's just a wrestler who tries to get people to the ground and just pound on them. It doesn't matter who he fights, or Crow Cop, who's still the best striker in the world, I believe. It doesn't matter. He just gets it done. And until we see him in the UFC, we're not gonna see the best heavyweight in the world. We're really not. We're just gonna continue to speculate. So, nevertheless, hope everybody enjoyed UFC 70. I want to know if you fans think the same way I do about this certain issue that I'm going to bring up. Joe Rogan and Mike Goldberg. I don't know if you have. I mean, I'm a fan of those guys. I don't disrespect the job that they do, but this is the thing I'm going to talk about with them. I know a lot of you know or don't know that HBO is going to now be picking up the UFC. And they're going to be bringing in their own commentators. It's not going to be Jim Lampley and Larry Merchant. They're going to be producing the show. So this is the first time that the UFC is going to relinquish that kind of control to an outside source. And actually, I'm looking forward to it, because I want to see more objective commentating, guys that aren't employees or puppets of the promotion, just basically hyping up the fights and hyping up the fighters, trying to, they were like, you could just tell, like last night, Rogan was just like so reaching for things and ideas to give to the fans to make us believe that Gonzaga belonged in there with Crow Cop, like questioning the bone structure of Crow Cop's jaw and stuff like that. At the last pay-per-view, he was mentioning that Luke Cuomo drank pee. I mean, dude, come on. I remember after a fight, the first time I really thought Joe Rogan was a bit of an idiot was the end of the fight with Rich Franklin and Nate Quarry. Nate Quarry got totally decimated. I mean, KO'd standing up. It was nasty knockout. He goes to interview him, and he's like, "Oh, I'm sprayed with blood." The guy's just had his nose shattered, his orbital bone broken, and you're like, "Oh, I'm sprayed with blood." You're interviewing a guy who'd just been in a nasty fight, dude. Come on. I think Joe Rogan needs to get a grip sometimes. I know he trains MMA and stuff like that, but I just think that I'd like to see some more objective commentating, a little bit more clear cut, to the point. Let's talk about the fights. Let's talk about the fighters. Let's not sit here and just try to hype up the fight and sell it to the fans. And that's basically it. Don't try to bandwagon jump, because I remember when Rogan was all over Tito Ortiz, just couldn't say enough great things about Tito Ortiz. Now if you listen to him, oh God, Tito Ortiz is this, he can't do this, he can't. The same thing with Chuck Liddell. I remember when Chuck lost to Randy, how Randy was his hero, and before that, I remember when he was in the heavyweight division, Rogan was like, Couture should think about retiring, 2 tough losses against Barnett and Rodriguez, he's almost 40 years old. Comes back, beats Liddell, beats Ortiz. Come on. I just think that I'm looking forward to a bit more objective commentary, a bit more, to the point, more business-like, as opposed to the stuff we hear right now. But sorry about the rant. I just had to get it out. Hope you enjoyed the show. It was another crazy night, and it happens, and we're gonna learn that the way this sport is, the way it works, it's gonna happen more times than not. We'll see Crow Cop back, I'm sure. Definitely. He's got 2 more fights on his UFC contract. He's going to be in there with a champion at some point. He had a bad night. Hope you enjoyed this segment. I hope you guys have a good rest of your weekend. Till then, have a good one. Take care.